Good morning, everyone. You're all very welcome to our talk by the Department of Classics. I'd like to start off by introducing us. This is going to be a two-way talk. This is my colleague, Professor Brian McGing, who is the Regius Professor of Greek. He's also head of the School of Arts and Humanities. My name is Christine Morris. I'm head of classics at the moment, and I'm an archaeologist. So we're going to divide the talk into three parts and share the presentation. First thing we're going to do is talk a little bit about the relevance of classics. Why should you study classics? Why does it matter anymore? The main part of the talk will be information about the different programs we offer. So we offer a range of things which may appeal to different people. And then we're going to talk a little bit at the end about our students and what our students go on to do. So with that in mind, I'm going to hand over to Brian, who's going to say a little bit about the relationship between the past and the present.
Yes, good. Yes, it is. Good morning still. Great to see you. Come on in. Don't hesitate. Just briefly to think relevance. I mean, do we bury ourselves away in dusty old records of the past? Well, actually, partly I do. I work with Greek papyri. I'll show you one or two of those later. But in fact, the classical world is all around us, really, visually, in this university. Virtually any of the 18th century buildings are influenced by classical architectural models. The front of the college, and around, even if you go out, I mean, if you go to the top of Grafton Street, you see a Roman triumphal arch. If you take that photograph out of its context, actually, without seeing the inscriptions on it, it just is exactly like a Roman triumphal arch, or churches in Westland Row. Just the visual world in which we live has a constant reference, actually, to the classical past, and the creative arts even more so, really. Poetry, particularly, theatre, obviously. I don't know if people see Marina Carr's plays, but they're very much based on 5th century, great tragedian Euripides. But if you look at even Seamus Heaney's recent, latest collection, it's a lovely poem there where he talks about translating Virgil. It's half set in his modern home and half in the ancient world. I mean, a constant mixing of inspiration, I suppose, from the classical world in the whole area of creative arts. Politics, of course, democracy. I mean, it starts in Athens, a rather different democracy from ours, of course, but still it was the first experiment in democracy, like Pericles. Rome, also influential, not really a democracy, but in the founding of the United States Constitution. I mean, one of the big models they looked at was the Roman Republic, not the imperial system so much, but especially the age of Cicero, even though it was rather disorganized politically, constitutionally. Olympic Games, hardly need recall. Christine's been meretricious in showing our latest triumph in the Olympics, but film, every now and again there's a burst of film, isn't there? Just as a matter of interest, I mean, there's 300, Gladiator, and what was it called? Troy, wasn't it? Yeah. Who liked 300? Yeah. Troy? Yeah, a few. And Gladiator? I think Gladiator wins out, doesn't it? I rather like Troy, but I mean, I thought Brad Pitt was rather a good sort of sulky Hollywood star, rather what I thought of Achilles should be, actually. But anyway, I mean, they are interesting, these things. We dealt, Christine and I, with 300, with a seminar group last year, or it was part of what we were talking about, the image of Sparta. So this world is actually, it's one of the strands. We live in a society that has and with individuals who have multiple identities. We're made up of all sorts of bits and pieces. We are not just one nationalist, Republican, Irishman. We're supporters of Manchester United. We're people who have a classical past or a Celtic or whatever. And the classical past is actually part of our identity in different ways.
Okay, well, we'll move on and give you some factual information now about the courses we offer. So we're a department of classics, and we offer both single honours degrees and TSM or joint honours degrees. So just to start off by briefly orientating, you can
come and sit down if you want.
Study
don't hesitate.
Single honours classics, which is Latin and ancient Greek together. There's also another degree which is run within our school, Ancient and Medieval History and Culture, which is an interdisciplinary degree. We'll say a bit more about that in a moment. And each of those you study for 4 years. You study the whole subject with us. You can also, as I'm sure many of you know, do a joint honours degree, which is called a two-subject moderatorship, or TSM, and we contribute 4 TSMs in the college: classical civilization, ancient history and archaeology, Latin and ancient Greek. And you take one of these with a second subject, and in fact you can combine one of the languages with either Class Civ or with ancient history and archaeology, or with any of the other allowable combinations of TSM subjects. And if you're doing TSM, you do both subjects equally for 3 years, and then you choose during your 3rd year, around now, this time of year actually, the students are deciding which one to major in as well. So let's look now at each of them and what the differences are between them. So first of all, classical civilization. This is most suited to people who have a strong interest in literature and philosophy. You do a wide range of subjects. We do mythology in the, first year. You study literature and philosophy intensively, and you do some history and some art as well. And to give you an idea of some of the specific courses that we offer, Epic, you do Homer and Virgil, study Greek drama, that's what we're looking at here, the philosophers, Plato and Socrates, thematic courses as well, where we range across a wide range of literature and art, so gender and sexuality is one of those, and Roman comedy is another. So I'm hand back to Brian. Let's talk about the languages.
We obviously have a long tradition in this university of studying Greek and Latin since it started, and they are still vibrant subjects, actually. We'll come on to jobs that people do at the end. But ancient Greek is very much about, it's a philological challenge. You can do it from beginning, ab initio, if you haven't done it before. There's what we call Greek B. It's just a slightly slower progress. You have to learn the language in the first year. But it is, the purpose, there is a philological challenge. It's a difficult language, it's certainly not impossible, but the purpose is to be able to engage with the works of the ancient writers immediately. In classical civilization, you can read lots because it's read in English. In classics, in Greek and Latin, we probably read considerably less, but we have access to the kind of final interpretation. I mean, there are things you can't do in translation. There's plenty you can do that's important and challenging, but there are elements, the language kind of is the final key, I suppose, or the final lock. If you can unlock that, it's a big challenge in itself, but it's fun. It's nearly always very small groups. But if you're reading Plato, for instance, I mean, I think philosophers read Plato and they can't read Greek. You're not sure what you're interpreting. But that's Greek. Latin, I mean, the same applies. We're reading the great works of Greek and Latin, and some of lesser works as well, but I mean, these are the classics of European literature, starting with Homer and the Latin equivalent in Virgil, but in drama, in love poetry, personal poetry, in history writing, in philosophy. There is actually a huge range of subjects. That classics in itself is in many ways interdisciplinary, in that you are studying how to read philosophical texts. That's very different from studying how to read a poem of Catullus, actually. So interesting challenges, and it's fun. It is specific, but you need to know that you want this philological challenge. But it's not. When I did Greek from the age of 10, and you were generally considered to be lost if you didn't start at the age of 10. It's complete nonsense. You can learn Greek in a year. We've had many students who have learnt either Greek or Latin and then progressed through 4 years and have ended up reading it just as well as anybody did who started when they were age 10.
Okay. So we'll move back now to the other degree that your TSM that you can do with us. Again, like the classical civilization, it is all done in translation and it doesn't require any learning of Greek or Latin. So this is ancient history and archaeology. It's exactly what it says it is in the title. You'll be studying Greek and Roman history, the archaeology of the Greek and Roman world, which is a pretty big world. It's much more than just Greece and Rome. It's the whole of the Mediterranean and the Near East, especially in the time, of course, of the Roman Empire. And we also look a lot at the way that the Greeks and the Romans interact with the other cultures of the Mediterranean and the Near East. So in the Eastern kingdoms with Egypt and so on.
What did anyone think of Alexander the Great with Colin Farrell? Is that good? What? No, oh, right, okay, yeah. Tell us what you really think. It wasn't very good, was it? It was a bit too plonky, wasn't it? Anyway, sorry, go on, yeah.
Okay, more specifically, some of the particular courses that you can take if you're doing ancient history and archaeology. Obviously, Greek and Roman history, Greek and Roman archaeology as major courses. And then we offer more specialised courses in Roman Britain, in Hellenistic and Roman Egypt, and in the archaeology of the Bronze Age Mediterranean. So you can see there's quite a rich spread of courses. And I should also mention that Trinity is the only university in Ireland to offer a specialised degree in ancient history and archaeology together. The other thing which we've been doing for the last 4 years, which has been very popular with the students, I think you can probably see why, is that you can go and dig or do a study tour, which you've always been able to do, but you can do it now for academic credit in place of a course in class. And here you're seeing some of the students on digs, learning archaeological skills, and they're sitting in the theatre at Epidaurus on study tour to Greece. So that you don't have to do it, but this is an option that is open to you, and you can do it in the second and in the third year of study. Just to briefly mention again as well, this single honours degree, which is new, it's only in its 4th year now, in ancient and medieval history and culture, and it's a collaboration then between the 3 main departments in our school, classics, history of art and history. I won't say any more about it. There's a separate stand for it in the dining hall, and our colleague Dr. Hazel Dodge will be giving a talk about it. I think it's at 1:20 It's in room 3074. So if you're interested in that as well, do go along and hear the talk on that. Now, the other thing that we haven't spoken about, we've talked about the relevance and importance of classics, what we offer, but to say something about the department and the student experience, we are a small department. We have 8 full-time members of staff. The classes, some of the classes are in big lecture theatres like this, but all of our students benefit from small group teaching, which is a very important part of the Trinity experience. And we are very fortunate in that we have seminar room, which, as you can see at the top there, has an extremely nice view of the old building. So we're up on the top floor of the arts building, and here you can see some of the students busy reading. I think they were reading Plato. But we have our own seminar room, and the pictures below show our study area. We have a study area where the students can come and study and work together. And here's some of our very recent graduates. Again, they came back up to see us in all of their finery. So I'd sort of emphasise then, I think it is a very small and personal department. You get to know us well, and that is important to us. Okay, so I'm going to hand back to Brian, sort of what happens after you graduated.
I mean, one of the questions that constantly crops up, of course, is, well, what sort of job am I going to do? Or rather, what sort of job is my son or my daughter going to do? Is more often, it's harder to persuade parents often. And there's a great emphasis in the newspapers at the moment on science and technology. And of course, we need people qualified in science and technology. But in this sort of area, there is still a very large demand for critically educated graduates. And our graduates really have worked in more or less all sorts of areas. I mean, of course, there are things that lead on directly from what we do. I mean, there are a number of people who have a career in archaeology. If you want to be Indiana Jones, you can, it's certainly possible. Museum work, of course, is, and the whole heritage business is tied up with us, and history of art, and history, actually, the subjects of our school. Of course, some teaching. It used to be, when I was in college, that a lot of people did teaching, so, well, if everything else fails, I can be a teacher. Well, that doesn't work now. It is very hard to get teaching jobs. They're rare enough. Publishing, obviously, in the publishing world, actually, we have people there in various types of job. In the university world, we do, one of our jobs is to train the next generation of scholars, so people who go on to do a PhD in all the areas. That is one route. It's a small route. It's the academic route is it's a difficult one these days. But then more generally, in fact, pretty well everything, anywhere. I mean, there are people, we have a lot of people in the financial services of one sort or another. Given our economic woes of the last few years, obviously we didn't have enough classicists at the top in the banks, but there are people in banking. There was, it hasn't been for a bit, but there was quite a run on accountancy, I remember, some years ago, that a number of students went into that. Advertising, law, and the ancient world in Britain. I think there's a bigger tradition of Greek and Latin and then going on to law, but it holds here as well. We have a number of people in both areas of the law, barristers and solicitors. And then really in all areas of business. It may sound unlikely, but this is what happens. I mean, the truth is nobody walks into jobs anymore. They did when I was a graduate. I remember sitting with my fellow students and saying in our final year, well, which job are we going to take? Now, this may sound depressing to you, but it was how it was, and it is not that way now. You do not, it doesn't matter what you do. But there is a notion that you've got to do business studies if you want to get into business. Well, it's one very good way, but we have had plenty of people. In fact, I suspect in the end, in some form of business or other, many of our students do end up there. It is an important message. I'm not sure we're getting it out clearly. I mean, I was dealing with parents last year of somebody I know, and their son changed, last minute change to business studies in the CAO, and he came in and did it, and he just knew he didn't want to do it. Not because it's not good, but he just knew he didn't want to do it, so he wanted to transfer to history and did so. But it was the urge to do it was based on a false notion that the degrees are vocational. Obviously, in the business world, actually, I was in the theatre festival at a rather avant-garde opera, but the person running it did business studies in college, and I said, oh, it's interesting you end up here. And he said, well, the one thing I knew when I finished business studies, that the one area I knew I didn't want to work was in business. That's a sort of education. One of my students was Liam O'Weenley, actually. He did Latin for, I think, one term, and I met him later, and he said, it was a great service studying with you, because the one thing I knew I didn't want to do was Latin. There are other people who are more enthusiastic, but the point is this really is a general education, and that in spite of the sort of rhetoric, the public rhetoric is just brutally obsessed with technology, science, and you will walk into jobs there. Well, you won't, actually. Curiously, I was in America recently, and they're much more ready, I think, to accept the general applicability of the liberal arts, the humanities, and liberal studies. But, I mean, it's something that we need to talk about. If anyone wants to, at any stage, they can, and especially parents. But I think it is really important when you come to university, at whatever age, that you do try hard to do what you want to do, not what you think is going to make me a millionaire or whatever. Oh, no, I might think of that, but usually these things don't work out anyway. Most millionaires don't seem to have a university degree, do they? Anyway.
Okay, well, just finally, then to say that obviously we're very happy to answer questions. We have a stand in the dining hall if you'd like to go over and talk to other members of staff, and we have quite a lot of students there as well. We have a website. We also are on Facebook. And on our website, there's lots of more detailed information about our courses, but there's also some links for prospective students, and it includes a section called Student Voices, which are some comments our students have made, which are talking about their degrees, and also picking up on some of the things Brian has said about why they've chosen classics, what they hope to go on to do, and then one or two who have gone on into other areas. So any questions, any further information,
I think it's important to say, listen, you can phone, look on the website and phone us directly, or email us or whatever. But if you want to come in, I mean, there are some people who genuinely haven't got a clue what they want to do. And on a day like this, you hear about 10, 20 different people talk at you. If you want to talk, do come in. We are happy to meet anyone at any stage, and we can set you up with students to tell you the truth as opposed to what I might tell you. But anyone, any questions now before, if you just hold, yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. We have quite a number of Erasmus links. Again, they're listed on the website, and students go to all the countries usually when they're doing one of our courses with another modern European language. Beyond that, there are other links where you can go abroad to America as well. Usually go for a year.
Yeah.
Usually would go. The usual thing to do is to go in your second year. Because then that is a chance to sort of grow and to explore things. But the first and the second year results don't count towards the final grade of your exam.
Your degree.
So it's a good time to go where you can be a bit adventurous and so on. Whereas third year, the part of the marks counts towards the degree.
Mm.
How does that work if you're doing TSN then?
You do both. You go. I mean, we both departments help and advise you. So, for example, I was talking to a student the other day who's doing ancient history in Italian, and she was in Bologna last year for the year. So she was improving her Italian, but she was doing her archaeology and ancient history courses through Italian as well. So that's how it works. You have to be able to do both, but that works fine.
It's a good question. I mean, usually they go when they're doing our subjects because they're doing a modern language as well. But actually, we're really anxious to get people out to go, because it is a super opportunity to grow and get out of home and out of Ireland or whatever. So we facilitate it if we possibly can.
Do a lot of students do it?
Yes, a lot. Yeah.
Quite a lot. I mean, they go to Italy. We've got a link with Geneva as well.
Bordeaux, Geneva. I can't remember.
We have a link with the University of Cyprus too. So that's all listed on the website. But we give guidance and support about what's appropriate. Yeah.
Yeah.
As a UK student, what's the equivalent grade requirements for classical studies?
at admission level.
Yeah.
Well, there is an equivalence, but we probably need to talk about that afterwards. I don't have the figures in front of me. It can be tricky. The admissions office are sometimes a bit distant, but we might just have a quick word afterwards. There are equivalences to A levels or various other.
The information is up on the admissions website as well.
Yeah, but we might just have a quick word. The important thing is, if we can't answer your question now, we will later. Are there any other people from out of the jurisdiction? Yeah, it's quite difficult. I mean, if you have difficulties, don't hesitate to phone us, and we will press on your behalf, because Trinity is a big institution, and sometimes you get, oh, well, look at the website, and the answer isn't on the website necessarily. Any other questions? Yeah. Yeah. What subjects which? There's a
table, so
yeah.
the goodie bag that you've been given, one of the things is a lovely coloured table showing you which are the permitted TSM combinations.
Anyone got one of those?
You see from that very clearly. So you can't, there are lots of different TSM subjects, you can't combine all of them.
Oh, great, thanks.
So it shows you, it looks a bit scary, but in fact it's colour-coded.
Oh.
As well. And there's a TSM, there's another TSM talk, there's one on now, but there's another one on later, so if you wanted to kind of get more insight into how that works.
Yes, I mean, ancient history and archaeology, for instance, you can do with English literature, French, Greek, history of art, Italian, Jewish and Islamic civilization, Latin, Russian, Spanish, and they're all, there's a number of varieties. You can't do anything with anything because timetabling is already fairly chaotic. Thank you. But it's a good question. You need to get the information though, because that's important to see what is not allowed. It's nearly always just a timetabling thing. It's not that we don't like, I don't know, things you can't do at early Irish. It's just we can't timetable with it. Other questions? Yep. Well, I mean, you get down into specifics. I think what we still have in our degrees is a 4-year integrated degree. We can describe them in modules, but it's not actually a modular system. It is in some areas that people will come to, but in fact, we have a sort of graded path. We know what we're doing, what students should do in first year, second, third, fourth. Now, even in modular systems, you have prerequisites. You can't do a course in final year in X subject if you haven't done A as a prerequisite. But I mean, I think that is, most British universities, I think, have gone highly modular, whereas we would still have a design. We have an overall design rather than simply you must do 240 credits. So I think that's a differentiation. I mean, in Greek and Latin, we're still highly philological, that we have a demand that even an extern from Cambridge said they didn't have in their degree. So, I mean, the teaching of classics is, you know, there are fairly well-worn paths, I suppose. It would be more how we relate to students, the sort of things we do to, I mean, we don't just stand and lecture. We have different types of seminar, different types of assessment, involvement. I mean, most universities are thinking of that sort of thing, but difficult. It's difficult to answer. I mean, I could probably say, well, if you went to Bristol, this is what you do. We still teach, I think, rather more than the British universities. In first year, we had parents last year saying that they'd only have 6 hours in first year classics in a British university. I won't say which one. We would have about 12, I think, something would more like that, 10, 11, 12 would be a normal.
We do a lot of small group teaching as well, and the lecturers do that. We have teaching assistants, but the lecturers do the teaching. So. Just the short answer is we think that we offer a very high quality degree.
Yes, I suppose if we didn't, we'd hardly say, no, well, we're not very good, but yeah, you had a question.
When you're saying that it's a small department, how small are you talking?
Well, there are 8 members of staff. How many students there are is complicated because how you count that. There's a sort of technical way in the university, but in studying Greek and Latin, it varies quite a lot. There might be...
Yeah, someone was asking that on the stand to one of the students. He's in a final year Latin class, and there are 14 in the class. And
Yeah.
That's a big class.
That's quite big.
So for language classes, they might be quite small. In seminar groups, we'd be talking between sort of 8 and 15 students sitting around a table like the one that I showed.
But we also have big
lectures.
lectures. Yeah.
Like this as well.
The number of students studying our subjects, let's say in first year, would be somewhere around 70, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
In the department in one form or another. Now, they may be doing ancient history and archaeology with Italian or something, so that's why it's hard to count. But so there's a mixture of slightly bigger lectures. We don't have lectures of 400 people, which some universities do, but we would have in first year some of 70, 80 or even more, but then breaking up into small groups.
Yeah.
Yep.
One more question.
Yeah, one we've got to get out.
Those programs you're studying abroad, are they competitive or can anybody go on?
Well, yeah, they are competitive to a certain extent. If we have a weak student, on the whole, we probably don't want them to go. If they're having trouble getting through what we're doing, then it's probably not a good idea for them to go because it'll just throw them out altogether, out of kilter, so to speak. So, yes, it is competitive, but if somebody wants to go, I mean, we had a student a few years ago who told us he was going to spend the year in Harvard, and I think Christine was sort of mystified. Oh yeah, how are you doing that? He'd arranged it himself. I don't know, but you can. People, if you want to get away and you're doing well enough, then we would encourage you. But if not, we would put the brakes on. The modern languages do that as well, to be honest.
Okay, I think we probably have to stop now to make space for the next lecture to come in.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. But if you want to find out more, go to our stand or grab us as we go.
Good, nice to see you.